So this is the Bug Delver deck that I'm going to be recording a league with. Some people have been calling this style of deck Dark Thresh. And it's pretty popular at the moment because of this card here. Before Fatal Push was printed, most Bug Delver decks were more mid-range, running Tarmogoyfs, Hymn to Turax. Usually the full 4 Abrupt Decay as their primary removal, even a couple of Lilianas. So the sort of power level of the cards is quite high, but the curve is much higher as well than a typical Delver deck. So this is more of a sort of one-drop Bug Delver list, really just running the most efficient spells in Legacy. So onto the deck itself, threat base is here, so 4 Death Rites, 4 Delvers, 2 True Names, 2 Mandrills. People have been experimenting with quite different creature configurations. Notably, like a lot of people have been even cutting the Delvers and running Nimble Mongooses, geese in this slot. I think there's 2 sorts of schools of thought. One is you can sort of focus on blanking your opponent's spot removal by running Mongoose, and then cards like True Name. And then with more people playing Abrupt Decays and Fatal Pushes, Delve threats are pretty good at dodging most of the commonly played removal. I think Deathrite is just worth playing as a 4 of, and like Delver gives you so many free wins that I quite like this configuration, but I could be wrong. I mean, one of the problems is if you're running all of these hexproof beaters, then suddenly your Deathrites become removal targets. Although there are, to be honest, the card's already a removal magnet. So then people have been cutting the Deathrites. I'm pretty sure if you're in Bug, you want to be running 4 of this guy. So what else do we have? So there's typical Delver cantrip suite, 4 Ponder, 4 Brainstorm, dig you to threats, land drops, disruption, whatever you actually need. We're obviously running the 4 Wastelands and 4 Stifles. Often Stifle will act as a 1-mana Stone Rain against a fetch land. The card's actually pretty flexible. Kind of stifle like miracle triggers from the Miracles deck. And Planeswalker activation, stuff like that. It's actually pretty good. The removal suite. So I'm only running 3 Fatal Push. I think this has become a bit more common now. People experimented with 4 when the card was first printed. But the problem is that I mean, there's a pretty big constraint on this card. Like, people do occasionally play creatures that cost more than 2 mana. You don't always have the Revolt. So I think 3 is about the right number, especially if we're running Decays. Like, Decays I think you need to run a couple of this card still to answer counterbalance. And it's such a flexible, efficient card. It's worth spending 2 mana to kill all sorts of random permanents. Dismembers here. This is a concession to opposing mandrills and anglers. I think you need to be able to kill a 5 toughness creature. And the fact that you can kill a turn 1 Deathrite with a Dismember is also quite relevant. So this sort of counts as Fatal Push 4 in my mind, but they could also hit Gerbag Angler. This is a bit of a running 1 Collective Brutality. I'm pretty sure this is bad, but like I felt that the deck really wanted a sort of lightning bolt style effect. It's the problem of this deck is very much like Rug Delver with the red replaced with black, but the problem with Fatal Push is that it can't go to the face like Lightning Bolt can. So oftentimes you can almost close the game out, but you need to sort of do the last couple of points damage. Well, Collective Brutality is something that can go to the face. It also, in theory, has applications against combo decks, being able to make them discard a instant or sorcery is pretty relevant, and so it's just a sort of flexible card. It's possible there should be a Painful Truths. In an earlier build of the deck, I was running a Winter Orb in this slot, just as a concession to the fact that games are likely to go a little bit longer without bolts, and that Winter Orb helps to kind of slow the game down and make it play out more like the early game. What else? Oh, I've seen people playing Life from the Loam here too, which I think makes sense. Your deck works better when both you and your opponent have a small number of lands in play, and Loam can combine with Brainstorm to generate actual card advantage, or rather useful card advantage. So then finally we have the counter suite here. 4 force, 4 days, and this is pretty typical of most Delver decks. And then I'm running 3 pierces, just sort of general interaction, non-creature interaction. Not totally convinced by 3 pierces here. I think 4 would definitely be wrong. I can see 2 spell pierce, 1 spell snare, perhaps, or just 2 spell pierce and then like some other random card elsewhere in the deck. The reason I'm not running spell snare is that we've already got the 2 converter mana cost. We've got a lot of hate for that particular converted mana cost in our Abrupt Decays and Fatal Pushes. Okay, none of these cards answer things like Cabal Ritual or Infernal Tutor, but I feel that most of the scary 2s are permanents or creatures. I think you need a bit more flexibility. So that's currently the thinking behind 3 pierces. What else to say? I guess moving on to the sideboard. So I've got 3 pieces of interaction against graveyard decks. We have the Deathrite's main deck too, which are sort of better long game versus the reanimator decks. But I think you absolutely need some early interaction against the red-black deck in particular. Surgical is the most efficient way to interact with them, or one of the most efficient. It's also relevant versus things like Aggro Loam. Taking Life from the Loam or a Punishing Fire can be pretty good. Running a Cage is the 3rd piece of interaction here. We're not flashing anything back from our graveyard, so it doesn't hurt us. This is relevant versus Elves, shuts down Greensome Zenith. But I also like to have a mix of graveyard interaction. Like the red-black deck isn't necessarily going to bring in both. Well, they'll probably bring Collective Brutality for your Deathrites, but it's not clear that they'll be bringing in ways to kill artifacts. So often they'll sideboard to beat Surgical Extraction, and then you can drop a Cage, and then you just win, which can be quite good. And we have Flusterstorm of Thoughtseize. These are mostly intended to interact with combo decks. Flusterstorm is another good way of interacting with the red-black deck. If you're on the play, they go for the turn 1 with Chancellor backup. One of the Chancellor trigger will only counter the Flusterstorm that goes in the stack. It won't counter the copies from the Storm trigger. It's possible there should be 2 Flusterstorms, but I quite like Thoughtseize as just a general good card against some decks. Can be okay versus Eldrazi, just because their deck is very land heavy. They tend to run a small number of critical threats, and they have no library manipulation to find others. So if you sort of turn 1 Thoughtseize and sort of take a Reality Smasher or a Thought Knot Seer or something like that, then that can be a pretty big game. What else we have? Well, Pithy Needle, just generally a good card, mostly intended for miracles and lands. Dread of Night. I found Death and Taxes a pretty tough matchup with this deck, actually. So having one really, really relevant card for that matchup could be quite good. Obviously, I haven't managed to draw this versus Death and Taxes, but That's life, I suppose. In terms of the twos, Winter Orb is such a good card in this archetype. All of our spells cost 1, so the restriction that we can only untap one of our lands per turn is not a particularly big deal. It's primarily intended as hate against miracles and lands. If they have to choose between tapping a Maze of Ith, or like a kind of Richardson Port, and that's a kind of awkward situation for them. Winter Orb kind of makes sense to Divine Top pretty bad, because the Miracles player is often investing at least 1 mana into that per turn to float some key cards on top of their library. This is also good against like any mid-range deck that has a slightly clunkier curve than Delver. Like I would bring this in against Jund, I think, because their goal is to cast 4 drops and 3 drops, whereas our goal is to cast 1 mana spells. Golgari Charm, it's a sweeper intended for opposing True Names. The only card that it really hits out of our deck is True Name Nemesis. Our Delvers obviously always flip turn 1 anyway, because we've got loads of instants and sorceries. So I've gone for Golgari Charm rather than, say, Marsh Casualties. It's a little bit harder. Double black is a little bit tricky for this deck to get. There's a 3 mana version of this now that is one of the newer sets. I can't remember what it's called. But I think 2 mana is better. And then also the enchantment destruction mode can be relevant on this against Sneak and Show. Sometimes they'll just drop a sneak attack and pass. So being able to answer that's quite good. Then we have Loam for the grindy matchups. Sometimes you just need to waste your opponent out of the game. This can be quite good for that. I quite like this in the Delver Mirror, where I feel like you need a way of getting card advantage, but something like Painful Truths is too difficult to cast. A while ago I saw people running like a 1 of Ancestral Vision in their Delver sideboards, which seems too slow. So often the Delver Mirror kind of revolves around keeping your opponent off mana, so a card advantage engine that helps you develop your mana base is really, really good there. Edict, intended for lands, Eldrazi, and True Name Mirrors. Then a 3-drop slot, we've got all sorts of random good cards. Like most of my bug sideboards have these 4. Well, recently most of my bug sideboards have had these 4 cards. Maybe start with the Clique. So I quite like this as an extra threat that I can bring in versus combo that's also quite good versus miracles. It also has applications against things like lands or Life from the Loam decks. Like sometimes you can get a Life from the Loam out of their hand using the Clique if you time it properly. But in general, against combo, I cut the True Names and I want to cut the Mandrills too. These 4 are really sort of mid to late game threats. You can't drop a Mandrills turn 1. The quickest you can drop a True Name is turn 2 off a Deathrite, but you don't really want to be tapping out versus combo turn 2. And then the clock of 3 per turn isn't that great. Clique provides the same clock. You can cast it on your opponent's turn, which is just great, so you can leave up mana for like Spell Pierce and Stifle. Then if they don't do anything on their end step, you can Clique. The information is relevant. Sometimes you can also do this in response to like a few rituals, try and snag their 1 business spell after they've already committed a few resources. So that's absolutely great. Live Old, everyone loves Live Old. Again, it's a good combo, anti-combo card. Shutting down their cantrips is pretty good. You can very occasionally draw into a Flusterstorm. If they, Tendrils of Agony, you'll get like 8 to 9, 10 maybe storm triggers. You draw that many cards. Hopefully hit your 1-off Flusterstorm. But it's pretty good. I mean, it also attacks, which is very relevant versus combo decks. Crows and Grit. I might like this card more than everyone else. I just like being able to. It's an extra answer to counterbalance that's on the board. You can hit all sorts of awkward enchantments with this. It also gets rid of the top if that's something that you're looking to do. Battle Skull is a really good target for this. I think the reason this is in the slot is because I sort of based part of the deck off the kind of Rogue Delver lists. They always run an Ancient Grudge. So some way of being able to answer artifacts and enchantments seems like it's useful to have an extra way of doing that. Then the final card is Liliana, the Last Hope. So I've actually been really impressed by this card. It's extremely good versus miracles. Better than the Liliana of the Veil, because it can actually win the game. So against miracles, you can sort of drop a Liliana. They'll often bring in red blasts to interact with your threats, so things like be evolved in the Delvers. So it's really good that this can't be red blasted. Their main way of getting it off the board is Snapcaster Mage and maybe Vendilion Cleek. Liliana can protect herself pretty well against those. Her +1 ability will kill either of those creatures. It's not that great versus Swarm of Mentors and tokens. I mean, you can maybe like tag one token with this. It's good, really good grindy card. Also relevant versus elves. It's absolutely hilarious playing against elves when you have a Liliana in play. In theory, I like it versus Death and Taxes. It combos nicely with Dread of Night to basically deal with almost all their creatures. The only problem is it's pretty difficult to hit double black versus Death and Taxes. They're casting a 3-mana spell's quite difficult, potentially through a Thalia and potentially Richard and Ports. I quite like this. I guess I would also bring it in against Pyromancer, but again, like in a Delver Mirror, like relying on a double black card, which costs 3 mana total, doesn't seem like a winning strategy. So that's the deck. I'm not sure this is the perfect build. In particular, like I feel there should be a Painful Truths somewhere in the 75. Probably want to cut this Collective Brutality, but then that probably means that we need to cut a True Name, just to we don't want to be running too many 3-drops. It's possible that Mandrels should be an Angler. Mandrels might be better in a Rug Shell where you're pressuring your opponent's life more, and then the Trample is more relevant. But for now, I quite like Mandrels versus opposing True Names, so we'll sort of see what the meta does going forwards. But anyway, that's the deck. I've been having some success with it recently, and hopefully we'll do okay in the league.